When you started at Pensacola Police Department, was there a difference in environment between the two agencies, between the sheriff's office and the police department?
There was.
Okay.
There was really a different environment at the police department itself. Lou Goss was the chief in 1986, and I say he hired me. He probably had no idea.
Right.
I was in office twice, and I had to introduce myself both times. So it wasn't like he reached out and said, "Chip Simmons, you're my guy." That didn't happen. He had no idea who I was, but the culture of law enforcement was different. So my point is, Lou Goss was a chief, and he started in the 40s. And so the mentality of law enforcement in the 40s is vastly different than it was even in the 60s and 70s and certainly in the 80s when I started, and vastly different than it was here. So the culture there was a perception, and I don't want to cast judgment, so I'm talking, those who are listening, I'm talking about 1986. There was a perception that the Pensacola Police Department had a level of professionalism that was different than the Escambia County Sheriff's Office. Now, again, there's that, what you talked about, there's that rural outlook of the Escambia County Sheriff's Office, and then the Pensacola Police Department, the history that the city of Pensacola had, everything from the uniforms and the badges and the patches, and the fact that it's downtown Pensacola. It's just, there was a perception, and I was very proud of that. I like the way the Pensacola police officers carried themselves. I like the look of the uniforms, and I thought, you know what, that's something that I think I could really go after. And I knew a lot of people that worked at the sheriff's office. I knew that it was a sworn law enforcement agency, but I wanted to work downtown. I wanted to be in where the parades are. I wanted to be downtown where the fireworks were, and all that sort of thing. So that was kind of where it led me to the police department, and that was that difference of the perception, at least, of the two agencies.
See, I would 100% agree, and I'm glad you said it because I stopped me from saying it. So when I came here, this is 2009, the police department still had that perception where these individuals were professional. These individuals were not just hardened law enforcement officers, responding to calls, which the sheriff's office, just by the vast size, that's a lot what's happening, right? I mean, people don't understand that we are probably understaffed still at this point in time when you're talking about how big of an area the sheriff's office has to essentially police, where the police department is a little bit different. But the police department also had other events or other responsibilities, like being downtown for gallery night, being downtown for the parades. So there was a level of professionalism, but also almost like community outreach that normal everyday officers had to have, because they just weren't responding to calls, they were also involved with the community. And that's what always seemed to me to be evident at the police office when I came here. I mean, like I said, I've seen thousands and thousands of hours of police interaction, and the officers at that point in time, well, to be straight with you, when I came here, there were a lot more senior police officers than there was deputies.
Right.
So the class of people that I started with, Von Ansbach Young, Kilgan, these guys were young. We were all young, right? Where the police department had much older, experienced guys, cooler under pressure, knew what to do. That's what I would see.
Well, and it kind of permeates down throughout the agency itself. So when you start, you get this, we're better than everyone else, and I kind of dug that. I mean, I'm a competitive guy. If we're going to do something, let's do it the best. Let's be the best. Let's look the best. Let's act the best, and let's be the best. The Pensacola Police Department had a requirement of a college degree before you get promoted. The Escambia County Sheriff's Office did not do that, and that's a little things like that. So by the time you got to the Pensacola Police Department, they're pushing training and they're pushing college education, and so I mean they paid for it. Now these are all things that the sheriff's office did as well, but it seemed like they took a little bit longer to get a hold of that, and it may well be that they didn't have the manpower, to adequately do that. You talked about engagement, and we'll talk a lot about engagement, I guess, or I hope. And the Pensacola Police Department, we had more people per 1,000 population, so we had people dedicated to community relations, we called it back then. And so we had, we were early on the Citizens Law Enforcement Academy or Police Academy at the time. So there was a lot of things that we were able to do at the Pensacola Police Department. Again, we're out front of a parade, marching around in our light blue and our red, white, and blue cars at the time with our, black shoes and shiny belts. And we were that, and we really took ownership of it. But you know what? That's what I learned And I learned the value of that, and I like to take what I can every stop I make, whether it's an agency change or whether it's a unit change.